Welcome. Believe it or not, we're past the midpoint. This is week 6, and I hope you enjoyed last week. Whatever you were doing was fun, and it included finance. I hope you've kept up with your assessments. I'm relying a lot on your ability to read, redo stuff, do more practice. And every week I start off with a review of the past week. I do it in different ways depending on the nature of what we dealt with before. But I just want to remind you what we did last week. We started moving towards what I call financing for 2 reasons. One, it's interesting on its own right. In fact, most of my work has been on stocks, which is the topic of this week. But for our class, our Introduction to Finance class, it's all about how do you measure value. And there are 2 pieces in measuring value. One is the cash flows, and the other is the cost of capital, or the little r. And we are doing financing to understand risk and return in the context of value creation. But the good news is, as you think about investing, you can invest in either bonds or stocks. Remember, a deposit account in the bank is a bond, is a relationship between you and the bank. So let's revisit briefly what we did last time. To recap, and this time I'll do it in real time with you as I write instead of just going through details in a PowerPoint. We started off with something called zero coupon. And the nature, just to keep things simple, it is a 10-year bond, but immediately I wrote 20 here. And why is that? Because turns out in the US, 6 months is viewed as the compounding interval for bonds. And a zero coupon bond, say, gives 100, or let's assume 1,000 at face value. So what happens? It's a simple situation where there is no coupon. So basically zeros. What is the nature of this beast? It's the simplest animal for 2 reasons. One, price is equal to 1,000 discounted by 1 plus yield to maturity raised to power 20. Very straightforward. The second, if held till maturity, you get the yield. Remember, the yield is per 6-month period. Every 6 months you're not going to get the yield. You're going to get it on average. So in that sense, this is called a risk-free bond. Then we threw in the same kind of bond, just for simplicity, just with coupons though. Quick question. Though there is no risk, quote unquote, in holding the bond for entire 20 periods, in the first one, you will get $1,000. There is inflation risk, which we have ignored for a little while. Is there a risk in that bond if you sell it before? Answer is yes. There's price risk. Which means what? If interest rates change after point 0 and they go up steadily, the price will fall. If they go down steadily, the price will go up. So price risk is the relationship between price and yield to maturity, which changes. The yield to maturity changes. Now, when a coupon is paid, you introduce a second form of risk, and that's called coupon reinvestment risk. I'm not going to write out the whole thing simply because it takes up time, but you will recall that's what we talked about. Now, the nature and beauty of the coupon reinvestment risk is it moves in the opposite direction of the price risk. So imagine for some reason you have to sell this bond, and let's assume, like last time, the coupon is 30. Suppose you have to sell this bond in year 10 again. What risks do you face now? Both price risk and coupon. Price risk is always looking forward, and in this case, coupon reinvestment risk is you're looking backwards, but you're already in the future. So you're looking forward in some sense. What will be the future value of CCC at time 10? And the interest rates going up will help that. But if interest rates keep going up, it's going to hurt the price at which I'll sell. So coupon reinvestment risk and price risk move in opposite direction. And I promised you I'll gradually introduce risk, but without any concreteness in some sense, till we get to it a week from today. Finally, I talked about the same bond, say, just for, this doesn't have to be the case, but it's interesting to make it identical to this one. But the only thing that I changed was I made it a company. So given these two bonds, identical, what have I introduced now? I've introduced another thought, which is, while we may believe that the government will pay 30, 30, 30, 30, and then 1,000, the last one, which is simply different in terms of who is issuing this bond, what's going to happen? You're going to add another source of risk in your head, and it's called default risk. So suppose this is selling for 980. What will this sell for? More or less? And I hope your answer is the right one, which is less than 980. And how much less will depend on how likely and by what amount do you think default will occur. Remember, whenever things go wrong way or right way, you have to worry about two things. What's the probability, what is the chance of it happening, and if it happens, what's the damage or benefit. And people don't think clearly about these two separately. They like to think about things as a chunk. But I think it's very important to separate the two. Again, flirting with the risk, not explicitly doing it. So these were bonds. The important point about the bonds is this. It's a contract. If you see the 30, 30, 30,000, it's written on the IOU. In other words, you're not going to pay 980 if you don't have that contract in your face, right? And similarly, you're not going to pay whatever amount you would for a corporate bond, which is less than 980 in this example, unless you see that promise. It's a contract between you and the borrower. And this is the tragedy, in my view, of a bond. A bond is a contract. And let me now go over, after taking a pause and you reflecting on last week, I'm going to start with one of the most fascinating things we have ever witnessed, called a stock. Okay? Take care. See you soon.